Take a girl and a guy, and they fall madly in love and form a family. Sprinkle in some counseling degrees and a doctorate, a dream of transforming relationships as we know it. And 20 years later, we give you power couple Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. And this is their podcast, Couples Synergy.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for Connections tonight. You know, I'm not really sure how you're feeling about the webinar tonight. I might sound a little different because this is the way people sound like when they're walking on eggshells. We can do it at school, we could do it at work with coworkers or with supervisors or employees, but we can also do that in our relationships. So tonight, Dr. Ray and Jean will be talking about walking on eggshells, what it looks like in relationships, and how it can impact them. So right now, let's welcome Dr. Ray and Jean.
Hello.
Hey, Ange, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's very loud.
Is it really loud?
Well, that might just be me.
Yeah,
But I
okay.
can hear you very clearly. That's
Very nice. That's good. That's really good.
And, for all of our viewers, if at any point the sound is a little weird or too loud, please let us know.
Yeah,
Because I can only hear through my earbuds. So
You did a really good job of demonstrating walking on eggshells there.
Ray was walking on eggshells about your sound. He was like, "Wah!"
Just like, tiptoeing, right? That's kind of, this topic actually came up in a session I had the other day because a client was talking to me about feeling like he's always walking on eggshells, around his partner. And so I said, you know what? That's a really great topic for our webinar. I think we're going to talk about that. So I'm sure that everyone out there at one point or another has felt like they were tiptoeing around their partner, kind of walking on eggshells, right? You're cautious because you don't want to say the wrong thing, and you don't want to do the wrong thing. And so you kind of censor your words, or you kind of avoid your partner and give some space because, well, who wants to get into a fight?
Right.
Yeah, right. Who wants to get in a fight? Nobody wants to get in a fight, right? And especially if you've been in a relationship for a long time, that is kind of the trend. The trend is to start kind of censoring your words and backing off of really sensitive topics because you don't want to hurt your partner, but you also don't want to be in trouble and you don't want to get in a fight.
I really want to talk about this topic from the perspective of a continuum, because sometimes it's appropriate to walk on the eggshells.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
And it's a normal thing that healthy couples go through, and couples without a problem, because maybe one person has a lot of stress, or maybe you messed up and there's not really the right time to fully process that, or the other person needs some time to cool off, but what we're talking about is when this is a pattern of behavior that lasts for weeks, months, years, and you'll see other people also do that. And, this behavior sort of starts it's a childhood thing where it starts. And so there's a book called Stop Walking on Eggshells, which is when you had very dysfunctional parents. But it applies to all human behavior, I would say.
Sure.
In a normal way. It's the duration of how long it lasts and how demanding and toxic the other person is. So if someone is making up rules in their head that you have somehow violated and you didn't even know they were there, that's the really toxic kind that we're talking about. We're not just talking about someone who snaps because, they're stressed because maybe they have a job interview or they haven't gotten enough sleep or whatever. We're talking about, you know, you didn't do this. Well, I didn't know that was a thing. Well, you should have. That kind of stuff that you'd have to almost try to read someone's mind. And it sort of begins, especially if you live in a home where someone has, it's what I would say, someone is breathing all the oxygen in the house. So maybe that person has an illness. Maybe that person is a caretaker and they're so motivated to caretake that they don't leave space for other people. That person might be an addict of some kind, where people are not directly facing an emotion and everyone is sort of in the whole family revolving around, we're not touching this topic. And so I always like to describe it like this. Like, imagine that you're in third grade and you are the student of the week and everybody's celebrating you and you feel great. And, you know, you get off the school bus and you go home and you get up to your front door and you put your hand on the doorknob and you go, oh, I wonder what's happening in there. It doesn't feel safe that I can just throw the door open and run through the house and say, hey, I had this great week. And so you take your happiness and you put it in your backpack and you go in and you look at the environment. How's the environment? What type of mood are the people in? Is, you know, this person okay if there's a sick person in the home? Is it okay to make noise? Is there space for me? And then oftentimes it never is your turn and there isn't space. And so you go about managing things by people pleasing and making sure everyone else is okay.
Yeah, this is a coping mechanism that develops early on, and it plays out in current relationships. So this is, you know, as Jean is talking about, it's a pattern that, you know, you've developed early on to learn how to cope with whatever, you know, unstable environment that you're in. And then when you get into a committed partnership, all of a sudden it comes to the surface, and all of a sudden your partner is doing something that makes you feel like you want to cope in the same manner. And so you start to kind of treat everyone like with kid gloves, and you start tiptoeing around, and, you know, it is all of a sudden you're back in the same place again. It feels exactly the same. And this always happens in a relationship when your partner is having their iceberg issues, their past issues coming to the surface, right? So they're being activated by whatever is going on for them, and that's coming to the surface. Now that triggers or activates you to go back into your coping mechanism of tiptoeing and walking on eggshells.
I have a good example that we experienced.
Yeah, okay.
So you were in a relationship before I met you, a very long relationship that had some of these characteristics. And when you would go to work and you would come home and you would talk about work, you would say like, oh, Jeff was talking about blah, 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 blah. But if it was a female coworker, you would go, and my other coworker would, and you would get like this anxiousness about you and try to like, la, 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 it's fine. It's normal. It's not a big deal. And you were expecting me to have an issue that you worked in a space with women, you know, because that was an issue in your previous relationship.
Yeah, being in the toxic relationship, it was like, you know, it was any time that I was talking to another woman, it was a big, like, powder keg that goes off, right? And so that carried into this relationship in the beginning, and it was only until, you know, you were able to kind of point that out that it was like, oh, wow, yeah, I didn't know that I was doing that.
And so that's what ends up happening is you actually create a worse situation than it actually is. And so I was getting a feeling from you like you were doing something wrong because you were already guilty and you hadn't done anything wrong. And so a better way to handle that is, you know, you just invited me to meet your coworkers. And then when you said Jennifer or whoever, I knew who you were talking about. And it ended up settling all those things down. So it ends up being no big deal. And those are normal things that couples have to go through, especially if they've been hurt by a past partner and there's stuff coming up for healing. And, you know, sometimes the things that hurt us, they seem irrational. Well, mostly they're irrational. they're not logical, they're emotional. And so whenever it's emotional, like I have an irrational, maybe it's not irrational, I think it's pretty normal for me. But if we're in a public pool,
Oh yeah.
I can only tolerate it for a little bit, and then I will feel some hair in my hand or a Band-Aid or something, and I'm like, I'm out of here. And there are some really early childhood experiences where, I shared a bathroom with, 8 siblings, and there was usually it's like our bathroom was like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, that one where there was like, you would get out of the shower and there might be a washcloth and it was probably soggy.
No.
And you wouldn't have so that, and then
Gross.
And then my military experience, which we won't go into, but that's where those things come from, where I have a certain limit and then I'm like, oh, I'm out of here.
Right.
Which sounds totally logical for me, but most people aren't bothered by it.
So just so that you all know that a lot of these activators and activating events here, they're all emotional in nature, and it's not going to make any sense logically. Okay. And it may seem like, if your partner is having an intense emotional reaction to something you said or did, and it just doesn't seem right, seems kind of like out of left field, that typically is one of those past activating events coming to the present, right? And that's usually a signal to you that this is what's going on internally for them. And if your reaction to that is now to tiptoe around it, right, or to now start backing off that issue, it's not going away, right? That issue is going to be here to stay until the two of you are able to work on it and work through it and be able to heal that. And so this is some of the work that we've talked about in the past, in past webinars, is that this is those emotional wound work, right? And if you are starting to now if you treat your partner like they're fragile, right? Or that, oh my gosh, I don't want to activate them in this way because this is a painful place for them, you're not doing them any good. You're not doing them any favors. You're actually making the issue worse, right? Because now you're putting a fence around that problem. You're not even touching it, and you're not helping your partner heal it. And this is a job in a committed relationship for partners to heal together.
Yeah, and usually this is a dance that you both learned before you met. And if you're confused as to why you're in trouble in a relationship, this is exactly what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And you've heard us say this before, that every template for all of us, our first relationship is parent-child. And so when we show up as an adult with another adult in a relationship, we've only learned the parent or the child part so far. And so we can only flip-flop between the parent-child. And when those wounds come up and our child is scared, we flip into the parent part and we try to scold the other person to get them to not step on that iceberg so it doesn't hurt so much. And if the other person goes, oh, I'm sorry, I need to be careful, they're actually just saying, yes, that problem is too scary to touch. Mm-hmm. And they're joining in the dance. And then there is not an opportunity then for honesty. And honesty is that part that says, like let's go into this, let's calm ourselves down a little bit and share with me, what are you actually feeling? And when we talk about feelings being non-negotiable and feelings are always true, it is for that person feeling it. It doesn't mean it's a truth of the world, but the feelings are true.
Right. You've heard us say in the past that, physical wounds heal, with time, and it's advantageous to avoid those physical wounds, right, and physical pain. But when it comes to emotional wounds, we have to lean into it. And this is what we're talking about here, is that, if you feel like you're tiptoeing around a minefield and you want to avoid hitting any of these mines, well, it's inevitable that you're going to hit one. And the more you try to tiptoe, the worse it's going to be, right? And so it is very important for you as a partner, if you're feeling like you need to tiptoe or walk on eggshells with your partner, to really just walk forward, all right, and stop really censoring yourself or being hesitant, because once you hit the mind, that's the opportunity there for the two of you to start healing something in the relationship. And the more you put it off, the worse it's going to be, right? That wound isn't going anywhere, as we've said. And the sooner that you guys can start attending to it and healing it and working on it together, the sooner you guys can level up in that relationship and get to that place of connecting over it. And now it's not a source of pain, it's a source of unity.
Yeah, we typically recommend a period of time that we call a cast, right?
Yeah.
Where, like, if you broke your leg, you would need a cast. And that cast would stop that leg from moving, so it gives the bone time to rejoin and go through a natural healing process. But if there's no cast and you just keep bumping it and it just keeps hurting and it just keeps growing not properly, then you have longer and longer term problems. And so the hardest part initially is to identify that, hey, what's going on here? This doesn't seem like a normal reaction emotionally to what just happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's a really hard thing to do because the other person, we've talked before about being in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
Yeah.
Right.
Fawn.
And did we talk about that with Bethany last week, right? With
Yeah.
EMDR. And so the person who is responding and tiptoeing and being careful is in fawn, which is actually a response to a dangerous
Trauma,
thing,
right.
right? And the other person is in the place of fight. And so as long as the fawn is going to comply with the person who's in fight mode, you're going to reinforce that pattern. And so it's going to work. And so if that person sort of blows up and then you get to avoid whatever the thing was that was making them nervous or anxious to begin with, well, then that behavior works and those behaviors are going to continue. And the other thing you're doing is you're taking your energy and you're feeding that other person's energy, which makes you weaker, and it overempowers an unhealthy part of them.
Yeah, I was wondering if anyone out there has had any of these experiences, because I'm sure everyone has, right? This is kind of a normal process of relationship development.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, a lot of the things that we talk about are normal processes of relationship development. You know, this is not necessarily a dysfunctional thing, although when you're going through it, it really feels dysfunctional. It is only dysfunctional if the couple is not able to move through that, to heal from it, and to be able to learn and grow from it. So, meaning that they get stuck. Or they get stuck in the same dance, in the same cycle of, ooh, they bump into the issue, it hurts. Now the other person's reacting by backing off, and then, you know, they back off. The other person now feels empowered, you know, that there is a problem, and so they're reinforced, and then they come back to status quo, and then they start that same cycle and that dance over again. So that when it repeats over and over and over again over a long course of time, as Jean said earlier, that is where it gets very dysfunctional. And that pattern, you know, is, as I've said, it's an opportunity, and many couples miss that opportunity, and they don't have the tools and the skills to be able to handle it when it comes up.
I would imagine you're going to see this in people who are children right now during COVID. And the natural response, if somebody falls down, if somebody bumps themselves, if someone hurts themselves, the natural response is to go to them and touch them and reassure them. That's a natural response. And it's really sad when you see a 5-year-old run up to grandma and then go, grandma's not safe because of COVID. Mm. And instead of their natural response, which is to get affection and love, they're going, oh, this is dangerous. And it goes against what's healing for us as human beings, which is contact and connection. So animals run to a place, but people run to a person. And if you have this worldview that the people around you are unsafe, which is what the majority of these kids' lives are, because they were born or are growing up in this and don't really even remember life before COVID, that's going to be, when the world gets back to normal, that's going to be a thing that's kind of pre-programmed in their automatic response of, and then they'll have to decide if it's safe or not.
Yeah, that's the sad part of what we're going through these days here. But, it is going to be an opportunity in the future, when they are in future relationships, to be able to work through that and to heal that, right? So it's a really great example, because that we all have collected experiences like that throughout our entire life. And, from birth through our caregivers, our upbringing, and into our first relationships, we take all of that pain and all of those experiences, and we learn how to cope with it. And some of the coping skills that we learn, or we taught ourselves, are effective, and some of them are not, right? Some of them are kind of very detrimental to developing a relationship. Some of them are, we run away from problems. We run away from that pain instead of actually leaning into it and learning to grow from it. So that's really the skill here that couples need to learn, and it's an area that all of us need to work on. It's not something that's taught either, right?
So if you're on the side of the equation where you're the one freaking out, you're the one that's in fight or flight, and you're just so scared and acting, like the world's, gonna burn down around you, and everyone's like, nothing's going on, what's happening? The first thing you can do is you can ask yourself this question: am I safe? And I literally mean your physical body. Is your physical body safe? Are you about to freeze? Are you about to fall off a cliff? Is there a bear chasing you? Are you about to starve to death? And if the answer is no on your physical person, then start to tell yourself over and over again, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe. And what that will do is it'll settle down that amygdala response and kind of let your hindbrain know that everything's okay, because your hindbrain doesn't know the difference between an emotional memory and literally being in danger. And it's going to respond the same way. And so that's a really good reality check to sit in that and kind of self-talk. And it probably is going to take about 20 to 30 minutes, because we've talked about why, right? If you take a medication, it's in your every cell in your body in 20 minutes. It takes time for those stress chemicals to leave your body, about 20 minutes, and maybe even longer if you're still freaking out. So that's one little thing that you can start to do, which can help you feel better when you're really in the middle of that pain.
Absolutely. Right. I think we have Rhino here said that he finds it to be an area he needs to work on as he deals with my past emotional abuse. Yeah, as I said, it is an area that all of us need to work on. We are not aware of the emotional wounds that we carry with us. And, we were in a podcast, we were interviewing a podcast, and he asked, emotional wounds, it sounds like a very negative thing, right? It sounds like something that we shouldn't have. And, the thing is that we all have wounds. As we grow up, we all fall down and skin our knees, right? And fall off our bike and run into sliding glass doors. And I'm running out of examples, but we all collect these experiences of pain, throughout our lives, and they are in our lives to teach us something, right? And if we don't learn from it, we are doomed to repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again. And so when we, encounter this within a relationship, it's very hard to put two and two together. It's very hard for us to understand that, this pain that I'm feeling, or this feeling of abandonment that I'm feeling, or this fear that I'm feeling, this is fear that I felt when I was 8. This is a fear that I felt when I was 12, that abandonment. Oh, I experienced my first relationship. The emotion is the same. All right. Emotions are absolutely the same, and they are not debatable. The specifics of the events are going to be different. And so that's where we get confused. We're not able to understand that, this situation here is the same feeling as the one in the past because this situation is completely different. Well, that feeling is coming up again now in our relationship in order for us to learn from it and to grow from it for good and to be able to put that wound away and be able to let that heal. Because as we've talked about in the past, emotional wounds do not go away, right? Jean just mentioned that earlier. They do not go away. They sit there until we actually heal them ourselves. And the person that can actually help you heal that is your partner in a long-term committed partnership, right? And so this tiptoeing is part of reinforcing that negative cycle and not allowing that opportunity, for the two of you to grow from it.
Yeah, when we were being interviewed, he was saying something like, how do we not make this a negative connotation?
Yeah.
And I said, well, it's not negative, it's just normal. And it's normal because none of us are getting out of this alive. And when we're born, we are completely helpless. And so there, of course, is a time in your life, even if you had the most wonderful parents in the world, that they were exhausted. You were probably 3 weeks old. They'd been getting up every couple hours to feed you. They're tired. It's the middle of the night. You wake up. It's dark. You're wet. You're hungry. You cry out and no one comes. And you cry out and no one comes. And maybe you cry for 20 minutes. And in those 20 minutes, your brain is going, oh, we're dying. No one's coming and we're going to die, which is literally true at that stage of your life. And then, of course, your parents come and take care of you and everything's fine. And it doesn't appear to be a trauma, which it's not a trauma. It's just life. And then you have to leave and go to kindergarten, or your friend moves away, or you're like someone and they don't like you, or they break up with you. And so we get these little things. They're not little, they're big, and they feel big along the road of life. And they're there to help us grow and to stimulate this growth. Because we always talk about, we're not here to be happy.
No.
We're here to grow.
No, surprise. Yeah, we're not in relationships to be happy.
Or to live forever.
What? What do you mean?
Yeah. So they are very normal.
So, I wonder if this idea of walking on eggshells, which from an anxiety viewpoint, I see as avoiding, pushing back that is coming up for healing, like you said. Is there a way that you would agree to connect that to the idea that when they're teaching kids to swim, sometimes what's been said about, like, if you're drowning, right? If, like, let's say a toddler is in the pool, in the deep end, and what they're doing is they're flapping their arms around because they don't know how to swim. They're scared out of their mind. And what they don't know at that moment is if they used that energy for doing the doggy paddle to get a few feet to the side, they'd be able to hold on to the ledge. So it's sort of like, where do you put your energy towards? Avoiding it, like silently freaking out, or to going to your partner?
Absolutely.
That's a great
and
analogy.
there is a good example because that's the tendency, is to continue to freak out, right? And to try to avoid whatever is causing you that pain. So it seems counterproductive, to move towards your partner who is the one that is hurting you. Like, why would I want to do that, right? They just said something or did something that hurt me, right? Or I should say, activating a pain that I have inside, right? Something that I've carried with me all these years. And why would I want to now move towards my partner that has activated that in me. You know, we want to move away. All right. Whenever we walk into a room and there's a couple in there, you can always tell if a fight has happened because they're apart from each other and there's just so much negative, angry energy in the room, right? And so it's that repelling or kind of moving to your corners to kind of defend yourself and put up a guard.
Yeah, if you use the swimming example, even a child at that age, if they're being held by their parent and slowly walked into the water, they're freaking out. They're like, what is this sensation? And, you know, you really have to almost disrupt that natural reaction of fear in order to go, here, pat the water. It's fun. I've got you. You're okay. And then they can relax into it and enjoy it. And then they can learn, how do you move yourself through water, right? And if you're the person on the receiving end of someone's pain because they're in that place, one thing that you can say to them is, I'm not the one who hurt you, especially if you're not the one who hurt them. We're not talking about a thing where you just mess something up, but really they're just having an emotional reaction and they're blasting you because you're their safe person. And here's a secret. So all the women, close your ears right now. If it's her, she really wants you to hold her, even though she's kicking and screaming and trying to push away. And that physical touch and saying, I'm not the one who hurt you, it's a really big thing that can go a long way. Do you guys want the same thing?
Yes, they do.
Yeah. Shh. Guys, close your ears.
Yeah. It's a secret. But that's really what we want, is we want nurture from our partner, you know, especially when these old wounds come up, you know, that are from the past. You know, we become big little kids, you know, and so we feel very vulnerable. We feel, you know, exposed and hurt and afraid. And what we want is for that, you know, our partner to come and nurture us and be able to help us take away that pain. You know, you look at a toddler when they are going through pain, that's what they want from their parents. Even if, you know, they're kicking and screaming, they still want their parents to hold them tight, you know, and to be able to provide that strong, nurturing structure, you know. And so, yes, you know, when we are in a loving relationship, we look for our partner to do that too.
Mm-hmm.
So then how do you do that if yourself or your partner is wounded when there is a social gathering, like you're hosting a party, you know, or you're around a lot of people?
That is a really great question.
And requires some really good skills.
Right. It really does. And it actually requires a lot of pre-work, should say, prep work. Yeah, prep work. You know, for example, let's use an example of a couple that maybe they, you know, when she goes to her family's house, she gets criticized or judged or something like that, right? And that's something that she may have grown up with throughout her entire life. Well, as a couple, they want to prep before going into a situation like that, right? They want to talk to each other about what is it that they're going to do when it happens. Like, expecting that is absolutely going to happen. And so when it does, how are we going to be united and stay united? And also, what are we going to do? What's our reaction going to be, right? How are we going to support each other through it, right? And so sometimes maybe a couple has to put a plan in place that, you know, we're only going to stay for a certain period of time, okay? And maybe if, you know, the judgment comes up or something is said that activates that pain inside again, you know, that we're going to wink at each other. I'm going to wink at you when that comes up for me and it's hurting me, right? So it's a little signal, you know, to your partner that you might be going through that, right? And then maybe they come up with a plan that if that comes up, that they're going to, excuse themselves to go outside and get some fresh air or something, right? And so when they have this plan in place, they are able to, really unite and not just be kind of at the hands of whatever the situation brings up, but be able to, kind of handle that together.
Yeah, and humor really can be helpful, especially if it's a predictable event. So if the criticism is coming from the mom and for sure it's going to happen, you can like make a bet, like, I bet she's going to say something that is judgmental within the first 2 minutes. Or, no, I give her 5. I think she'll make it to 5. Or it's going to happen 30 times and you bet on it. And then at the end, you're like, see, I won. It was 31. And it helps it not feel so personal so that you understand it's the other person's stuff. But that pre-gaming is really important. And just to have your partner with you during those things can be really helpful. What if it's your partner, though? What if your partner's the one who...
And before you go into that,
Yeah.
let me just add on to the game experience. So you're talking about preparing / pre-gaming with your partner, right? But what I love to talk about during session, when it's appropriate, when needed, which there's many people who do need to hear this, they need this sort of tool to use, is make it into a game. And I always say you could do that individually. Let's say if you're going to a family gathering and it's very uncomfortable, but it's more fun if you do have someone you trust, like your partner, and there's all sorts of games you can make. The most important thing is that you create your own, because then it's going to be valuable and do the work that it's supposed to do.
Yeah, and if you have someone that you can let in on the game, like a trusted friend or a sibling or a partner, so that when it's over, you can debrief, like, how did that go? And it really is amazing how when we don't have that, we're just sort of left really exposed and bombarded with something. And then what happens is our mind starts going. And then we go,
That's the worst place to be.
Yeah.
Worst place to be is in your mind.
Are they right? Are they not right? And, anything we can say out loud, we can tend to and deal with. And everything we keep in our head is so dangerous.
Yes, absolutely. Right. And so when we're talking about, back to walking on eggshells and everything, when a couple's doing that, or when one person is doing that, they are literally having the relationship up in their mind.
Yeah.
Right. And it is just consistently creating more and more of a gap between the two people. Right. Because now you're starting to assume what the other person is thinking and what they're feeling. And even if they say, hey, what you did hurt me, or what you did angered me, it'd be like, okay, well, I won't ever do that again. Well, that's not the point, right? The point isn't to just change your behavior. The point is to understand it, right? So it's like, okay, that hurts you. I'm sorry that hurt you. Can you tell me more? Right? Why did that hurt you? Where is that coming from? Right? And when's the first time that you felt that way? And if you felt that way early on in our relationship, is there a reason why you didn't tell me, you didn't let me know that? Is there a response that I'm giving you that doesn't make me approachable, right? So this is the process of understanding at a deeper level, who your partner is and what about these wounds that they are bringing into the relationship, is being activated by your current relationship, right? And understanding that brings about a deeper level of connection and more vulnerability between the two of you.
I think that this kind of sets us up for a great topic for next time.
Yeah.
Which is power versus force.
Ooh.
And what's always happening in these kind of scenarios are that the person who has the power to take responsibility is not. And the only one that has the power over your emotions is you. Your partner does not. And it's when someone's given responsibility for something they don't have the power to change. And so I think that's a great topic for next time
Yes.
to go into some more details about, because that's exactly what happens when we're children, right? Our parents are having a bad day and they dump it on us, and we think that it's something we did
Right.
because we don't know. And that's how we learn as kids. We say, oh, well, if they're not happy with me, if they're not pleased with me, I need to do something better, right, different, when it was never
Yeah.
you all along.
I think that really is the solution, is to just mold yourself to whatever anybody wants you to do or to be. That's really it. You know,
It's perfect.
there's a takeaway here for everybody. So just behave.
So I'd be really happy
Right.
if you wake up tomorrow and cook me breakfast and serve me breakfast in bed, and then I won't make sure my coffee's the right temperature and the right amount of
And the right coffee cup.
and,
The right coffee cup.
and you can spend your whole life monitoring that.
Yeah.
And so this
Yes,
is
dear.
really about, when we're talking about, this is a form of anxiety, because the actual problem isn't, you're literally not dying. And so the actual problem is emotional and old. It's not even in the present.
Mhm.
And so with anxiety, what we need to do is stay in it and grow resilience, and changing the environment so you don't have to deal with it actually creates the opposite effect of resilience.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So walk confidently through that minefield and step on them
And watch it blow.
and watch it blow, and then ask, why did it blow? Right? And try to understand why it blew, and then try to understand the pain and where that's coming from your partner, because you love them, you care about them, and you don't want them to continue to carry around a pain that they've carried around for their entire life. Right? That's the opportunity here, to help them be able to put it down for good and be able to move together and be able to heal it for good. So we want to let you know about our summer schedule that's coming up here, okay? Because I think we've been doing this weekly webinar for 29 weeks now, 29 weeks, right? So next week, Jean and I will be in the backcountry hiking in Arkansas. So we will not be able to tune in. I don't think we have really good cell reception there. But, we will be kind of posting our position on the trail from time to time on Couple Synergy page. So you can take a look at where we are on the trail. But we will not be doing our Tuesday night call next Tuesday, but we will follow it up with the following week. So that last week of May, we will be doing, this weekly webinar. And then going into June, July, and August, we will be doing it on the third Tuesday of the month. So third Tuesday of the month, we will be doing the weekly webinar going into the summer schedule. Right.
So, if you're using this as your date night, that would be a good time to catch up on our podcast. I think we're at 160 episodes. Something like that.
168?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Can't even keep track anymore of how much content we have.
Yeah. Or, the weather's getting nice, and make sure you're still spending that time, having those good quality conversations. It's really important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We don't just preach it, we practice it, right? And so, going on this hike for us is something that we enjoy because we're able to connect with each other. We have several hikes that are planned this year, which is very exciting, given that last year was kind of, the way last year was.
Also, we want to invite you to the Lighthouse Motion Wellness Center's open house.
Yeah.
If you're in the Chicagoland area, that is on May 22nd from 12 to 2. So you'll be able to see what happens behind closed doors at the counseling center and our beautiful new space, which we've actually been in for a year, but we couldn't invite you in yet until now. So come and say hi, and that'd be awesome to see you. So,
So,
time.
yeah, unless there's any questions out there, you guys have been pretty quiet out there. We are going to.
But we appreciate all the participation we had tonight.
Absolutely, yeah. This is awesome. And so I hope that the topic of today, walking on eggshells, has been informative for all of you. And we look forward to seeing you again. So are we going to go into meditation now?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. So we're actually going to close our eyes today. And just allow yourself to go inward. And try to connect to the oldest and deepest part of you. And I want you to find that part of you and see that as the beginning of a path. And see that path stretched out in front of you. And begin walking down the path. And along the way, you'll find some stones. And maybe this stone has stubbed your toe, or you've tripped over it. It's just the little things in life that are irritating. And pick that stone up and put it in your backpack. And continue walking through your life. And you may see bigger rocks. And rocks that are so big that they're obstacles. And you have to actually get off your path to get around them. And find one that particularly stands out. And pick it up. And feel the weight of it. And collect it in your backpack. And feel the collection of all of the things in life that you stumbled over, that have tripped you, or that have just caused you a great deal of pain. And feel the weight of your backpack. And imagine getting to the present day and feeling the full weight of all the bumps and bruises of this life. And now imagine that there's a crossroads up ahead. And at the crossroads, you meet your partner. And the first thing you notice is how big their backpack is. And you begin walking down the path together. And you stumble and fall together. And the weight of those packs make you fall down. And as you fall down, the pack opens up and some of those rocks spill out. And you see a rock of your partner's and you pick it up. And you're surprised at how light it is for you to hold that rock. And you ask if they'd like some help in letting this go. And you throw that rock back into the past. And they see some of your rocks. And the weight of your rocks for them is much lighter for them. And you realize by sharing your rocks, it's lightened your pack. And you stand back up and help your partner to their feet and begin walking down the path again, feeling lighter and connected. And each time you fall is an opportunity for those rocks to spill out, to be shared, and to be released. With amazing awareness of how light other people's rocks are and how heavy our own are and how much we need others to get through this life. And imagine a day far down the path when the pack is much lighter and the connection with your partner is much greater and the sun is shining and it's a beautiful day and you feel more happiness than pain. And in that place, imagine turning to your partner and hugging them very close with a tight squeeze because it feels so much better to have someone to carry your load with you. And even if you're not walking with a partner, know that each time you stumble and fall, you can choose to release those rocks or put them back in the backpack. As you give yourself permission to examine those rocks, understand what they're here to teach you, and to move forward stronger and lighter. And bring your awareness back to your breath. And allow yourself to feel the hope. The hope of moving through your pain, growing from it, and releasing it on this journey of life. And take 3 conscious breaths and gently open your eyes.
Well, thank you for joining us on this journey. It's almost like you guys are joining us on the hike next week. Hey, Brad, thanks very much for the compliment there. It is a great topic. Thank you for joining us on the topic of walking on eggshells with your partner. Remember that next week we are taking a break. We are going to be on the trail, but you will see some posts from us actually on the trail.
There's actually a Facebook page called On the Trail,
on the trail with Ray and
Jean.
Jean. But we will be posting it on here on Couples Synergy.
And Couples
our
Synergy
location.
Community. Yep.
Yes. We'll take a break next week, but we'll be back the following week again for another Connections webinar. And until next time, synergize your life and synergize your love.